Prince Oscar of Pharsis and his assistant, Lazar, sneak out of the castle and go to an azure tower in the middle of nowhere. Their mission is to meet the Witch of the Azure Moon, who grants a wish to anyone who can reach her at the tower's summit. Oscar then goes through a series of puzzles and challenges as he climbs the tower. Midway through the stairs, it's revealed that the last person ever to successfully reach the top was the prince's great-grandfather, King Regius, around 70 years ago. When the two enter the final room, two demon statues come to life and attack them. Prince Oscar successfully defeats the statues, but the floor beneath them starts to collapse, causing Lazar to fall. The prince enters the room where the witch resides, and he is greeted by the witch, named Tinashe. Tinashe was surprised to hear the prince was related to Regius, and her familiar noted that Lazar was asleep at the bottom of the tower, unharmed. Prince Oscar explains that another powerful witch, the Witch of Silence, placed a curse on him that would kill any woman with whom he tries to have a child and asks Tinashe to lift it. However, the curse proves to be beyond even Tinashe's ability to break it, so she tries to search for a woman strong enough to withstand the curse. Oscar gets Tinashe to admit she could survive the curse, so he changes his wish as the tower's champion from Tinashe, breaking the curse to her becoming his wife. Tinashe adamantly refuses, but Oscar persists. Neither side backs down, so Oscar proposes an agreement, requesting that Tinashe leave her tower and live with him for 1 year as his bodyguard. Finding the wish more reasonable, she agrees and returns to Pharsis with Oscar and Lazar. At Oscar's residence in Pharsis's castle, Tinashe moves into the castle but insists on keeping her identity hidden. As part of her role as protector, she casts a spell on Oscar, negating any magical or physical attack on him. While walking in the hallway with Lazar, Tinashe finds out that all the prince's cousins went missing, leaving him as the only royal left. While walking in the hallway, she saves Sylvia from a falling chandelier with her magic. Curve is surprised that Tinashe cast a spell without an incantation and notes that the prince brought her here from the witch's tower. After helping Lazar, Tinashe notices some are practicing swords. Lazar tells her that those are General Ars and Meridina. The General Ars wins the match, and Lazar mentions that he is quite the fighter, and he is one of the younger generals, but he is also the most skilled, but the prince is still stronger than him. Tinashe thinks that this explains why Oscar was able to conquer the tower, and she then goes to do some sword practice herself. Ars realizes that she is a veteran, and he mentions that she should become a knight instead of a mage. While walking through the castle, one of her familiars, Latola, informs her of a surge of magic power in the magical lake in Drusa. Tinashe then asks permission from Oscar to investigate, but Oscar reminds her that he has formed a contract with her, and he can't have her leave at any time. Afterwards, we see that Oscar has prepared some soldiers, and Sylvia notices a baby dragon on Tinashe's shoulders. She finds it cute, and she introduces herself to Tinashe. Once they arrive at the lake, Tinashe then senses someone is following them, and an old Drusa mage reveals himself. He mentions that he didn't expect to see Tinashe again, and he states that she looks the same as she did 70 years ago. The soldiers are surprised to hear this, and Tinashe tells the old man that back then he was just a child. The old man mentions that normally he would be long dead now, and we find out that his master was beheaded by Tinashe 70 years ago. He attacks them with his magic, and the attack manages to wound a few of the soldiers, but Oscar saves the rest. The old man then leaves, and Oscar wonders if Tinashe knew that man. Tinashe states that he was one of the Drusa mage involved in controlling the beast and is trying to release a demonic beast she sealed away 70 years ago. Tinashe again asks the prince to let her progress alone. Oscar relents but makes her promise to come back safely. Meanwhile, Drusa mage is trying to break the seal quickly after finding out that the witch is here, and the old man thinks that he is going to make sure that power is restored to Drusa mage with the help of this demonic beast. However, Tinashe arrives, then kills all of the mages, and she states that she will undo the seal for them if this is what they want. She then uses her magic to remove the seal and unleash the beast. Afterwards, she tells her dragon to stay away from here until it's safe, and the dragon leaves. The beast then attacks Tinashe, but she dodges, and she attacks him, but her attack has no effect. Tinashe then places some spell bombs on the beast's body, and she blasts them, and this does damage the beast, but it heals instantaneously. Tanasha then binds the beast with some chains, and she states that this time she is going to kill him. She then prepares a powerful attack for the beast, but the beast bites her as she casts her final spell. However, she completes the spell, and this obliterates the beast. Her pet dragon carries the wounded witch back to Oscar, who immediately takes her back to Farsas for healing. After some time, Sylvia noted that Tanasha healed herself, and Oscar wonders if he can go check on her. He then enters the room, and Tanasha tells him that she had severe organ damage, so she recovered by accelerating her body's growth, and now has the body of an adult. Oscar mentions that no one was injured due to her actions, and Tanasha states that this is the least she could do as a witch. After petting her familiar, Sylvia caught Tanasha trying to cut her hair, which grew as a result of her rapid aging, with a dagger. After getting over her panic, Sylvia cuts it for her. Later, Oscar introduces Tanasha to his father, the king, revealing that she is the Witch of the Azure Moon and declaring his intention to marry her. Tanasha states that this is not going to happen, as she is only here to lift the curse. The king asks Tanasha if she will be able to break his son's curse, and Tanasha says she has had some difficulties when examining it, and it will take some time before she can finish understanding it, but she will figure something out in the end. Meanwhile, two mages, Vault and Miralise, are at the lake where Tanasha slew the demonic beast and took a crystal that the beast dropped after the battle. A mysterious man arrives and tells them that he is trying to find Tanasha and attacks the duo when they try to leave. Vault teleported Miralise to safety, leaving him to be vaporized by the man. Oscar and Lazar escape the castle to go to the Bile Forest, where 9 villages were found killed. While out in the forest, Lazar then notices a pearl plant while on the way. He tells Oscar about it, and some more plants like that then show up in the area, and they try to strangle him, but Oscar saves him. He then fights the plants, and he thinks that they must be responsible for the recent series of killings. He then attacks the big plant, and it releases poison on him. Seeing this, he tells Lazar that they should run away, but another plant releases some poisonous gas on Lazar that knocks out him. Oscar then notices a mysterious woman arrives and takes him to her cabin to save him. While there, she introduces herself as Lucretia, the Witch of the Forbidden Forest and longtime friend of Tanasha. Lazar mentions that Oscar climbed that tower by himself, and Lucretia states that this is incredible. She wonders what kind of contract he formed with her, and Oscar is reluctant to tell her about it. But Lazar mentions that Oscar wants to marry Tanasha. Oscar states that she turned him down, and she is acting as his protector instead. Lucretia offers the prince an aphrodisiac to attract her, but he refuses. The next day after Oscar wakes up and comes out of his room, Tanasha asks him if he is getting plenty of sleep, and Oscar mentions that he is. He then remembers something after seeing Tanasha, and Tanasha thinks that he is not sleeping well, and she tells him to get some proper sleep. Oscar states that he is fine, but Tanasha senses something amiss, and she leaves. Tanasha asks with the mages about the prince's recent romantic relationships. She explains that his life energy has been fluctuating recently, and that he should reveal if he has a lover. Doan claims that no woman would be brave enough to approach the prince, and the other mages find this hard to believe, but Tanasha comments that he has been reeking of perfume recently. They claim they didn't notice any scent on him when they saw him before. Tanasha then learns what has been going on, which makes her angry. She then goes to Oscar, and she asks him if he met Lucretia. She figures out that he was cursed by Lucretia. She then scolded him and told him that she would break her curse when he was asleep. Later that night, Oscar was dreaming of being with Tanasha in bed, only to strangle her to death. Oscar wakes up in a panic, and Tanasha informs him the curse is broken. Oscar, still upset over the dream, tells her he never wants to kill her. Later, Tanasha scolds Lucretia for cursing her ward, but the older witch apologizes and gives her samples of Oscar's body fluids to help with her research into his curse. She also tells her that Oscar cherishes her. Tanasha returns to Oscar's office and apologizes for the trouble Lucretia caused. The next day, Oscar asks Tanasha to spar with him, even allowing her to use her magic on him. Kagger, an envoy from the nation of Kuskul, arrives and requests an audience the Witch of Azure Moon, but Oscar lies to him that she is not in the castle. While Tanasha is finding Oscar, she meets Oscar's maid, Miralise, who got the job through her relative General Eddard, then meets with Lucretia for tea. Lucretia mentions that she heard Tanasha sparred with Oscar. Tanasha wonders how she knows this and questions why she is here. She suggests that Tanasha give up on remaining neutral if it is bothering her, and Tanasha admits that she is unsure why she felt compelled to fight Oscar. She simply thought that it would be good to have someone who could kill her if anything happened, and she wonders whether she has grown tired of looking for that person. Oscar then comes there, and he tells Tanasha that there is a guest who wants to see her, and he refers to Tanasha as Heidi. He realizes that this really is one of her names. Oscar finally has Tanasha meet Kagger. She asks him not to call her by the name Heidi, and she wonders what he wants from her. Kagger asks her to come to Kuzgul and teach the mages there, but Tanasha refuses to help someone who didn't even bother to climb her tower. After meeting Lucretia in the castle's hallway, it is discovered that Kuzgul is a nation consisting of mages who proclaimed independence. Suddenly, Meridina attacked the three and harshly insulted Tanasha, telling her to leave the country. After hearing that, Tanasha becomes gloomy, and Oscar comforts her. Lucretia discovers that Meridina was under mind control. Later, Tanasha teleports Oscar to the tower and asks him to spar her there for a few days after she sends her familiar to Kuzgul. One day, after finishing his training, a group of adventurers arrives at the tower. Tanasha tells them that if they defeat Oscar, she'll grant them their wish. Oscar then starts fighting the challengers, and after a while he defeats them all. After defeating the adventurers, Tanasha declares the training complete. Tanasha's familiar returns from Kuzgul and tells them that there are around 200 mages in the nation, more than any other nation, which could mean they are planning a war. Suddenly, news breaks that General Eddard died, and the entire castle gathers to mourn. Afterwards, we see Miralise cornering Kagger in town, and she tells him that he is brave for showing his face here after his lord killed him in front of her eyes. She mentions that even if she can redo it all, that sin will not wash away, and she uses a wolf to kill him. Tanasha dreams of her past, where she is being carried somewhere by a man, only to wake up and find Oscar carrying her to bed after she fell asleep while sitting. The next day, the king summons Oscar. Tanasha finds out that Miralise is capable of withstanding Oscar's curse, making her a potential bride. The king states that Oscar should get to know Miralise better. Afterwards, Oscar questions Miralise about her magical abilities. She reveals her magic was sealed by her mother and Master Kumu. Oscar realizes that it's a twofold seal, and he then asks Lazar why Tanasha hasn't been around lately. He mentions that he hasn't seen her in the past week, and he wonders where she has gone. Oscar climbs the tower again to see Tanasha analyzing his curse with Lucretia. Back at the castle, General Ars tells Tanasha that there is no background history for Miralise. Now suspicious of her, she and Als test the young maid, pretending to hug intimately in plain view to see how she reacts. But Oscar also sees this. He calls Tanasha, puts a magic suppressing wristband on her, and carries her to bed, seemingly to force himself on her as punishment. Recalling her dream from earlier, Tanasha gets angry, and her magic flares out of control. Oscar immediately calms her down and apologizes, stating that he was only trying to scare her. Tanasha then tells him what really happened, and she finds out that Oscar has already given Ars a beating under the guise of training. He asks her to not hide information about Miralise from him, and he states that this sounds really suspicious. Later, he tells her father that he will only marry Tanasha no matter what happens. He then tells Miralise that he has no intention of making her his wife, and for now she will be removed from her position so they can look into her background. One of the ministers tries to restrain her, but Miralise reveals her true form. Tanasha tries to fight her, but she can't use her magic due to the bracelet, and Miralise manages to blind Tanasha's left eye, summoning a smaller version of the demon beast from Drusa, while the other to evacuate. The demon beast then attacks Oscar, but he manages to block, and Miralise tries to use a spell on Tanasha, but she deflects it, and she tries to attack Miralise, but the wolf stops her. Oscar then lands a hit on the demon beast, and Tanasha tells him to keep the demon beast busy, as she can't fight it without incantations. Miralise then spreads around some magic spheres, and she attacks Tinashe using them, and Tinashe can't destroy them. Oscar and Tinashe then regroup, and Oscar asks her if she has any plans. Tinashe asks him to keep the two of them busy while she prepares a spell. The demon beast then attacks Oscar, but he manages to block the attack. Miralise tries to attack Tinashe, but Oscar throws the demon beast in the line of her attack. Miralise then tries to use a spell on Oscar, but he negates it using his sword, and he then opens the demon beast's mouth using his sword, and he shoves a magic sphere down its throat. The magic sphere explodes inside the demon beast, and this takes it down. Tinashe then finishes preparing her spell, and she traps Miralise in a dark world, and she tells Oscar that he is not going to lose as long as he has her by his side. Afterwards, Miralise lets Miralise escape on purpose, and Oscar asks her where she is headed. Elsewhere, Miralise escapes to the treasury, finding what she was looking for. Tinashe binds her with a spell, but Miralise used magic to make her soul disappear, leaving a living but functionless body behind. Tinashe heals her eye, and Oscar again apologizes for taking his scare tactic too far. Elsewhere, the forces of Khuskul watched a burning town along with their king Lanak. He states that this site reminds him of the Dark Age when he was born. He mentions that a new age is about to dawn on the mainland, and the 4 great nations will be the first to go. Afterwards, Tinashe receives some information from her familiar, and after hearing this, she wonders why this is happening now after 400 years. The next morning, Oscar wakes up, and he notices some markings on his entire body. He finds Tinashe sleeping in his room, and he wakes her up to ask about the markings. Tinashe explains to him that she has placed another curse on Oscar, and now both the curses offset each other. Later, the king said thanks to Tinashe and invited her to King Kevin's birthday celebration and diplomatic ball. Lazar delivers a message to Oscar informing him about the king of Khuskul, Lanak, burning down villages and towns near the nation of Tairi's border. Oscar assumes it's revenge for Tairi's persecution of mages. Later, Tinashe suddenly asks Oscar to take official ownership of her pet dragon, Nark. He agrees, and after the transfer, Tinashe kisses him. Tinashe and Oscar attended the ball, where Oscar met Princess Cecilia of Tairi, who's attending in place of her brother. The two go to a private room, Oscar wanting to discuss the attack and Cecilia wanting to flirt, but Tinashe arrives. Cecilia tells her that it's rude to come in through the window, and she asks Oscar who she is. Oscar states that she is his mage, and Cecilia asks her to get out as she is a mere mage. Tinashe then gives her the death glare, and she tells him to leave at once, and seeing that Oscar is not saying anything, Cecilia leaves. Tinashe weakens Oscar's barrier and warns him of what's about to happen. She asks him to not forget that the future of the kingdom depends on him, and she tries to leave, and Oscar tries to stop her, but he can't move. Lanak, ruler of Khuskul, then appears, and Tinashe declares that she's leaving Oscar to be with him. Oscar decides to visit Lucrezia for advice, only for her to already be at the castle. Gathering his most trusted allies, he asks about Tinashe's past. Lucrezia reveals that Tinashe, whose real name is Tinashe as Mayor Edirna Toldar, has been looking for Lanak ever since she became a witch. She is also royalty of Toldar, a nation that was destroyed 400 years ago. Toldar chose their royalty based on who had the most magical power, and being the strongest in the land, Tinashe was expected to be the next ruler while Lanak, though the king's son, would only be her consort. Though they loved each other like family, envy and her alignment with a rival political faction led Lanak to turn against her. One night, he and his allies conducted a ritual to kill Tinashe and steal her power for themselves, but her overwhelming magic broke through the ritual and ran wild. A mortally wounded Tinashe managed to regain control of her magic, but not before it destroyed the kingdom. Having become an immortal witch as a result, she built the Tower of Azure Moon on the former land of Toldar to live out her days in solitude. Lucrezia then points out that Tinashe was protecting Oscar from Lanak when she weakened his barrier and gave him everything he needed to track her down. Khuskul demands the capitulation of the 4 great nations after Tinashe is reported to have attacked 5 large cities. The king demands that Oscar kill Tinashe, but he refuses, still intent on marrying her. The king asks him if he has forgotten that the lives of their people rest on his shoulders. Oscar mentions that there is no need to discuss this further as he has made up his mind, and the king understands, and he tells him to do what he wants. In exchange, he will have to take the throne as the king, and he tells him to take this opportunity to learn all he can. Oscar agrees to ascend to the throne, and the king tells him to keep in mind that his actions decide the fate of this kingdom. That's all for now. If you want more, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part.